Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So today it's Tuesday, so we're going to dive into some of the stories over the last few days. I want to talk about the drama surrounding Rachel Reeves, the winter fuel allowance, Trump's decision on tariffs. Well, he doesn't seem to understand tariffs, so we'll have to jump into that. And, Reform UK's polling. So, remember, guys, to smash the like button as you come on the stream. It's great for the YouTube algorithm, helps the stream a great deal. I want to say thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job in advance, as they always do, and I hope you have a wonderful night with me this evening. So, our first story, of course, is the resignation of a government minister. Well, let's jump into that and see what Sky News had to say about that.
Keir Starmer has lost a Treasury minister this afternoon. Pressure had been building, as you say, over links between Tulip Siddiq, who in fact in the Treasury was the anti-corruption minister, and her aunt, Sheikh Hasina, who until last year was Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She was ousted in something of a coup. Since she left office, there's been an anti-corruption investigation into Sheikh Hasina that's still ongoing.
Okay, before we continue, I have to ask the question, when somebody presents themselves as a candidate for a political party, does the political party not ask something like, do you have any dodgy background? Do you have anything, that people could pull out and use against you in the future? And if the answer is, well, then say, no, we don't want you on board. We always hear about these stories where somebody's come out, they had connections to somebody, or they had done something dodgy in the past, or no background checks. Exactly. There are no background checks, but also just ask people, do you have like 6 houses, or do you have connections to some regime, or do you have, have you done something in the past that could be a problem for the party today or for the future? Now, if they say no, no, everything's completely clean, then you have to do a bit of digging. And now with the tools that we have, at least, a few years ago wasn't possible, but today we have significantly powerful online tools that can check, who is this person? What have they done in the past? What are their connections? What are their comments in the past? You can look at their Twitter account or their Facebook page, and you can see, this person said this or did that, and it needs to be sorted out. So, yes, it's an extra level of concern when this person is a sort of somebody who's meant to be dealing with corruption.
Some of the properties that Tulip Siddiq lived in appear to have had links to Sheikh Hasina's family and to members of Sheikh Hasina's political party in Bangladesh. The new Bangladeshi Prime Minister suggesting some of those properties should be the subject of corruption investigations as part of that wider probe into the former Prime Minister. Where does this leave us? Well, over the last few days, since last week, the independent investigator into ministerial interests, an individual called Laurie Magnus, has been looking into Tulip Siddiq's affairs on behalf of the Prime Minister. Glancing at Tulip Siddiq's letter, what appears to have happened is that Laurie Magnus has said that Tulip Siddiq did not breach any part of the ministerial code. However, the Treasury Minister has herself decided to resign, fearing that the allegations of links to that former Prime Minister, who is now under investigation, she says will be something of a distraction. Just to pick out some key bits. Okay,
so she didn't do anything wrong, but it would become a distraction for the government, which is probably the right thing to do. Would Brexit AI not have sorted this? I actually have a story on Brexit and AI later on in the stream, which is quite interesting. I see was building Lego with Graham. He says, hi, Max. Thank you so much, Sarah. Great to see you on the stream tonight. I say hi to Graham and and enjoy the Lego after the stream, of course.
Of that letter, as you know, having conducted an in-depth review into the matter at my request, Laurie Magnus has confirmed, I have not breached the ministerial code. There's no evidence to suggest I acted improperly in relation to the properties I have owned or lived in, nor to suggest that any of my assets derive from anything other than legitimate means. She said her family connections are a matter of public record, but in that
I just noticed the comment from Bill, who's saying, I've been on a lot of US streams reminding people what happened to Clinton, asking them to compare to Trump and wonder why the orange you know what, is days away from becoming the president of the United States again. Yeah, like, the comparison here, Priti Patel was accused of bullying and she refused to resign. Did she eventually get kicked out? I don't remember. There's so much corruption. There's been so much corruption within successive Tory governments. It's difficult to keep track of all of it, or even any of it. Dominic Raab as well, another one who eventually resigned. But I think he eventually resigned. But once again, these are people who will refuse, even when there's clear evidence that they have breached the ministerial code. And it seems here that Tulip did not breach the code, but she decided to go anyway. Look, once again, I don't think the optics are very good, but there is a massive difference between this Labour administration and the previous Conservative governments, who were knee deep, neck deep, eye deep, forehead deep in absolute, sleaze and corruption. We have memberships from Alistair. Very kind of you, Alistair. Thank you so much for that. One to Doc, one to Stefan, one to Patrick, one to Matilda, one to Salman. Thank you so much for those memberships. Very kind of you, Alistair. I hope you're well tonight.
Penultimate paragraph, she says, it's clear that continuing in my role as Economic Secretary to the Treasury is likely to be a distraction for the government. My loyalty will always be to this Labour government and the programme of national renewal. I've therefore decided to resign from my ministerial position. So what that letter does, in effect, Saima, is suggest that Tulip Siddiq has taken the decision to resign. Often it turns out in these situations that letter comes after a little bit of a push from inside number 10. Certainly when Lou Hague left government, that was the case. Some of Keir Starmer aides easing her out.
Now, I know a lot of people online, well, not so much people, they're commentators. Our commentators people, our journalists people, a lot of them are trying to, inflate this and say, oh, look, this is Starmer's government falling apart. Look, I'm extremely critical of Keir Starmer's government. I'm extremely critical of a lot of the policies. Is this a massive scandal? No, not really. I keep coming back to the point of, does this impact ordinary people's lives? Not really. So your average person on the street doesn't know who this minister is, doesn't know why she's resigning, and probably couldn't give an F, because it's not impacting their lives. This is not like Partygate, where people made massive sacrifices during the pandemic to keep others safe, to protect themselves, their loved ones, and then they saw Boris Johnson and his cronies, having a shindig, reading out the rules and regulations that everyone has to follow every night, and saying people, make sure to maintain safe distance from each other, wear a mask, all of these things. And then he was, enjoying himself, having parties, and then denying that there were parties, then denying that he was at the parties, then denying that he knew it was a party, and then denying that it was a party, all of these things, and lying to Parliament, lying to the public. So this really rubbed people the wrong way, and because they felt impacted by this. I raised issues of corruption within the Conservative Party and never got any traction, not because I have any influence, but because the public don't really care about corruption. They don't care unless it's impacting their lives. And that's where Partygate had such an impact. This is not going to really make any difference to most people. The Conservatives, of course, are trying to make as much hay as possible, as you'll see here.
I think, first of all, it's a great shame for her and for the government, because she's one of the more able Labour ministers that we actually have. And it's in our national interest that we have good people in government, whatever party they might be in, depending on who happens to be running the country. And I think the thing that astonishes me and a lot of people out there right now isn't actually whether she has or has not done something wrong. And the letters that you referred to already set out what the government believes is the case. It's that sense of hypocrisy that, when Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition, he would attack us at every moment that we should be taking decisive action, that we should not wait for any inquiry to take place and so on. And yet here, he took no action at all. He waited for Tulip to fall on her own sword. They forced her to refer herself to the...
I'm sorry, but when it came to the Tories, it went on for weeks, months in some cases. So this is something that happened. Okay, you could criticize Keir Starmer for not acting fast enough, but the Tories would allow corruption to fester for weeks and months before, they would double down on it. They would say, no, nothing to see here. They would try to distract the public. And then, when it became untenable, then the minister or the MP would eventually resign or get kicked out. But it wouldn't happen straight away. It went on for weeks and months in some cases. So did Keir Starmer act fast enough? Probably not. But he's acting at light speed compared to what the Conservatives have been doing over the last number when they were in power.
Independent advisor, rather than directing that should be an inquiry from the Prime Minister. And so I think it's that sense of hypocrisy that when in opposition, they attacked us for all sorts of things. And Johnson's just
But it's not hypocrisy to attack you for being corrupt.
That, but in government, they're actually proving to be quite indecisive.
I mean, you're right. I mean, I remember attacking the previous Conservative government over the behaviour of Priti Patel, who I think the ministerial advisor at the time found against her for her behaviour. And the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, put in a Tory WhatsApp group, we've got to save the Pritster.
Is there a point?
Stick with it. She's now back on the front bench.
But
Kemi Badenoch's appointed her. That's terrible.
There we go. He has to go plate. A nice one, Keeler. But it's he needs to go plate. But it's once again, the Tories would rally around their minister because they knew that they had the power to just strong arm the media or try and ignore the situation and try and just move on. So Rachel Reeves instead is in a bit of bother. Now, I don't think she's going to resign. I think she's probably okay until what's allegedly possible is another budget. Now, this would be a disaster. Look, let me start off. Let me come back to this screen for a moment. Something I really didn't understand with the budget was why they didn't increase taxes on the wealthy. Now it seems because they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to grow the economy, and then with that growth, we're going to fund public services. But there is no growth. And I said at the time, what if there's no growth? What are you going to do then? Wouldn't it make more sense to tax the rich, tax wealth, tax land? Because then you would be guaranteed, okay, now we have this money, we can use it to fund public services, instead of taking a massive risk and saying, okay, we hope that we're going to get growth in the future, and then we will be able to fund public services. But what's happening now is there is no growth, and the cost of borrowing has gone up because of what's happening in the US, and there is a fear that Donald Trump will impose massive tariffs, which is going to make it more difficult for growth as well. Because you want to sell into the US, it's going to be very difficult with those massive tariffs. But also the feeling in the economy is not good. So how are you going to grow the economy, and how are you going to fund public services? So it seems that maybe the Chancellor is going to go down the road of more cuts, which would be a disaster. Rachel Reeves rejects Peking duck charge in Commons fight back. So this is just about what happened yesterday. She came out fighting, but a gutsy challenge Commons performance. But will a gutsy Commons performance be enough to save Rachel Reeves and restore confidence in her handling of the turmoil in the money markets? Remember, some of this is down to Rachel Reeves and her budget, but not all of it. I think it's important to remember that. The answer is that she lives to fight another day, but while she has undoubtedly bought herself some time, her position to remain precariously Her position will remain precarious unless the economy starts to recover, and it's not going to recover. It's probably going to get worse over the next number of months. In the opening statement to MPs, the embattled Chancellor bravely defended her controversial weekend trip to China, but barely mentioned the plunging pound, soaring borrowing costs, and stagnant inflation. Some people were critical of her going to China. I think what she came back with was pretty pathetic, but I think it made more sense for her to go, because if she had remained, then it would have spooked the markets even more. So she had said, okay, I'm going to cancel my trip to China, then the markets would be like, oh, there's a problem. There's a real problem. The chancellor is cancelling her meetings. So it's that would send the wrong message to the markets. I think it was the right approach. Not that she actually came back with very much. It seems, for example, Peru is doing more trade with China than the UK is, or in the future. So that's not good. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. If anyone thinks the UK is experiencing a weak pound, they should spend a night with my ex-girlfriend. Thank you, Brad. And the condolences to well, she's your ex, so that's okay. I don't know who decided to end the relationship there. we may know why, but Number 3, thank you so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. NFP due day, Saturday 7th of June 2025. NLP due day. NLP? What is that? You can just write the comment in the chat. There's no need to send another super chat. Stop wasting time and money on carbon capture theatrics. Plant trees and use the circular economy. Invest in green energy, not windfall tax on it. Yes, I agree 100%. The carbon capture is a scam, basically. It's about allowing the fossil fuel industry, and they're the ones who support it. You know, the fossil fuel industry is very much on board the idea of carbon capture because it allows them just to continue as business as usual. And it takes money away from real solutions like renewables. Bunker's comment, maybe not. Brad, is this disrespectful? I don't know how the modern man's way of being rude, and would like a clarification. To clarify, I don't have an ex-girlfriend. It was purely a joke. Okay. Reeves got a trust level deal that's worth less than a Mars bar and some belly button fluff. Pork markets. Well said. So, Politics Joe interviewed Richard Murphy, the economist or economic commentator. I'm not sure how we should describe him, and he's not too happy with Rachel Reeves.
She hasn't got the intellectual capacity, as far as I can see, about when looking at her economic discussions, to understand that we actually do need to have an integrated economic policy. Whilst we have the Treasury believing it can control one side of the equation and the Bank of England thinking it can control the other side of the equation, and the two working for fundamentally different goals, one for growth and one for the control of growth, which is what is happening. The Treasury is going for growth and the Bank of England is basically trying to stop growth. We will end up with those donuts that I explained, and that's the word I was looking at, which Jeremy Clarkson used to talk about when he was spinning cars on runways. Now, is it likely that Rachel Reeves is going to change this? The answer to that is, I don't think there's really very much chance at all that she's going to change that. I would she would, but she won't. Why? First of all, because she's obsessed with the fact that she worked in her time at the Bank of England. I think that proves her credibility. So she lives in awe of the bank. She actually even worked for Andrew Bailey, who is the governor of the bank. So I suspect she still thinks of him as a boss in reality. And I don't think she knows how to control it. And I think we've got the wrong person in charge as a result. And secondly, she hasn't got the intellectual capacity, as far as I can see, about when looking at her economic discussions, to understand that we actually do need to have an integrated economic policy, which we haven't got. We've got an integrated mess. Well, sorry, we've got a disintegrated mess. Perhaps I should have put it there. And that's the consequence. I mean, this is insoluble until we have a bigger brain managing the economy. And so far, we've not been gifted with that by Labour.
Okay. Ouch. It's quite quite cutting there. So, what he's very. I don't know. So I'm not an economist. I don't have any skills in this area, but I do get this feeling that he's extremely critical of the Bank of England, and maybe rightly so. But I think perhaps some of his criticism maybe is too strong when it comes to the Bank of England, because the Bank of England's job is very limited. And maybe it makes sense to have the Bank of England integrated in the sense of working with the government on policy to say, okay, what do we need to do? Because it seems they are disconnected, and maybe there's a justification to have them separate, because you don't want political influence at the Bank of England. Where can you imagine the Tories running the Bank of England? That would be a disaster. So there's a strong argument to be made to keep them separate. But if the government want to succeed, maybe they need to be able to put pressure on the Bank of England to do certain things. So I'm not completely sold either way. I think it's important that the Bank of England has its independence, but at the same time, the Bank of England is not helping the government, and the government need to, in some cases, put pressure on the Bank of England to do certain things. But his criticism of Rachel Reeves is probably justified, and it keeps coming back to this point that I raised earlier. Why did she not tax the rich? Because then you would actually have a guarantee on the money that you have. Okay, this is how much I have. This is what I have to work with. Instead, she put all her bets on growing the economy. And what has happened? The economy has not grown. And it's not like I was being clairvoyant or anything. You can look at the data. Sky News covered it on a number of occasions. The economy is not going to grow this year very much, and it's not going to grow next year very much. And whatever growth that you do get, it's not really going to cover the costs of rebuilding the damage that the Tories have inflicted upon the UK. So, 14 years of rot and destruction is not going to be fixed with 2% growth. So I think that's important to take away from this. Tap the assets, yes. I can imagine the Tories running away with the Bank of England. Literally, almost. There was a wonderful video. I think I used it in one of our comedy videos. It was where the pound was stolen. It was taken out because somebody wanted to have a look at it. They raced across open ground with the police chasing out. And then in order to, what was it? It was from The Day Today. I missed that show. It was really good. Well, the Queen had to lay another egg. But the way it was presented in a very formal way, and it was amazing. Anyway, oh my goodness. Let's move on. This is a story I wanted to cover just quickly. Reform deputy aiming for top spot in the polls. Finally, we asked Reform UK's deputy leader Richard Tice about Sky News' YouGov poll last night, showing his party is just 1 point behind Labour and well ahead of the Conservatives. So I actually heard an interesting interview with Sir John Curtis. So I rely on John Curtis a great deal. I think he's somebody who's quite neutral, and he focuses on... See, this is the thing about experts. Experts have a reputation to lose if they mess up. So it's important for them to be as neutral as possible, because if they're biased, then they're going to risk being completely wrong about something and ruining their reputation. This is something that, I got a bit burnt on this when it came to an expert, Alan Lichtman, when he predicted that Kamala Harris would win the election using his model. Now, maybe I could be burnt again, but Sir John Curtis has been pretty good on the money over the last number of years. So I think it's reasonable to rely on him. But he has said that Labour is losing a lot of support at the moment. But while the media focus on Reform UK, that support is not just going to Reform UK. A small percentage of it is going to Reform UK. Some of it is going to the Liberal Democrats. Some of it is going to the Greens. Some of it is going to independents. But the ones who are really losing out here is the Conservatives. So the Conservatives are losing more to reform than Labour is losing to reform. And that's a big problem for the Conservative Party. And I don't know how Kemi Badenoch can remain in her position for much longer, because she should be improving the situation for the Tories. But it's actually getting worse and worse. And, she's not making any headway in PMQs, which, is a bit ridiculous theatre at the best of times. And she's not making any real headway when it comes to policies. She's basically taken a back seat when it comes to policy. She keeps saying, look, we're not going to roll out any policies now, it's too early. And you can sort of understand that. But you actually have to counter Nigel Farage. But then the problem is, in order to counter Nigel Farage, she's abandoning the centre. She's trying to appeal to people in the Conservative Party, or not even trying to appeal to people outside the Conservative Party who already find, Nigel Farage to be their saviour. It's like trying to deconvert people who've actually met Jesus Christ. Okay. It's a weird analogy, but, the people who are signing up to Reform UK have abandoned the Conservatives. They're not coming back, and they're certainly not coming back with Kemi Badenoch in charge. I keep saying the Conservatives would need to come up with somebody fresh, somebody new, somebody who's not connected to the past, not connected to the destruction of the Conservative Party at the recent election. So, for me, ideally, it'd be somebody who's won a by-election, somebody new, somebody charismatic, somebody, I think, young as well, somebody who could counter. I think the Conservatives, if they wanted somebody who could challenge Farage, it would be a young man. And this is not to be sexist or anything. It's somebody that, because Farage is focusing a lot on young men at the moment, and he's convincing a lot of young men to join Reform UK. I don't know what about the numbers, but if the Conservatives could come up with a young man who's cool, who's able to stand up to Farage, who's able to call him out, to criticize him, who has a good media background, who's, maybe this would piss off people in the Conservative Party, because it's a party for, boomers, and I don't know, what's the generation before boomers? So it's probably not somebody that would appeal to older voters, but it's somebody that they could use to appeal to younger people. Now, surely they can find somebody in the Conservative Party that could match those requirements. But the silent generation, okay. Max, stop giving them ideas. They don't listen to me. Don't worry. They don't listen. They certainly do not listen to me, because when I give them good advice, they do the absolute opposite. So I can guarantee you, anything said here will not be heard by Kemi Badenoch or the Conservatives. Mobilizing the zombie army. They might think Robert Jenrick. It was Robert Jenrick that accused her of that. When did we start asking Robert Jenrick for information about Labour MPs and expect honesty in response? Farage focusing on young men sounds very camp. Ooh. What was I got from Carry On? Was it? I forget what his name is. Damn it. A wonderful actor. Jenrick is too toxic. I think to be leader or prime minister. I think for the Conservatives, for ordinary people, he's too toxic. But also I think the reason why he didn't, Kenneth Williams. Thanks for that. A terrible Kenneth Williams impression. But I think it's for Jenrick. The reason he didn't win recently because he's too because he's two-faced. So the public they prefer somebody who's weak, somebody who's pretty crap, as opposed to somebody who's dishonest. It's a bit strange for the Conservatives at this stage. We prefer somebody weak than somebody dishonest. We tried dishonest in the past, but it didn't really work out for us. Of course, there's Tice trying to make hay out of that situation. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so just take a short comedy moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this. Let me bring it up here.
Top of the morning to you. We don't fucking say that here. I have never heard an Irish person say that in real life, and we fucking hate the morning. You've been told now, if I hear it again, you're a racist. So what would an actual Irish greeting be like in the morning? This is what I'd say. How are you getting on? Up early. That is a true Irish greeting. How are you getting on means, how are you doing? But don't answer because I don't care. And then you either say, up early, or up early this morning. This lets the person know you're surprised to see them up early because you thought they were a lazy cunt. While we're talking about Irish myths, if I had a pot of gold, I wouldn't store it at the end of a fucking rainbow. I'm not a fucking idiot. I'd hide it in my mattress so I didn't have to pay any tax on it. Also, every rainbow I've ever seen in real life was a massive fucking disappointment. They never look like this. They always look faded out and blurry. They only look like they're about 40% loaded in. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. Follow me, I'm delicious.
I love this guy. Kemi Badenoch says grooming gang abusers are peasants from sub-communities in other countries. So she's really doubling down on the Farage rhetoric here, it seems. The Tory leader has called for a new national inquiry into grooming gangs that looks at two cultural issues of the perpetrators and the culture of silence. Honestly, I don't understand why she's doubling down on this now. I honestly think that the politicians have... Kemi Badenoch is... I don't know, she's like Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer. She's like 2 weeks behind everyone else. So, you know, when the media have moved on from this, when the other political parties have moved on from this, Kemi Badenoch jumps to action, jumps up and down and says, okay, we need to do something about this. Honestly, you know, this is the cynicism I have towards politics. It's, you know, something is an issue for today or this week, and then it's gone. And then they start talking about something else. And, you know, last week it was all about the grooming gangs, and now there's nothing mentioned about the grooming gangs, apart from Kemi Badenoch, who's like a week behind everyone else. The worst thing about it is it's nothing is going to be done. There isn't going to be a national inquiry. You know, there will be a bit of ranting and raving about it for a while, but nothing will be done. And the victims will... What needs to be happening, of course, is the measures that were presented as a result of the last inquiry, they need to be implemented. But that doesn't stop Kemi Badenoch trying to jump on the bandwagon as the bandwagon is turning a corner. She has now met survivors after revealing last week that she had not met any, while calling for a new national inquiry into the scandal that saw thousands of mainly white girls being abused by men, mainly of Pakistani origin. There's a systematic pattern of behavior that, not even just from one country, but from the sub-communities within those countries, people from a particular background, particular class background, work background, she told GB News. You know, people who are very, very poor, sort of peasant background, very, very rural. What's the language here? Almost cut off from even the home origin countries that they might have been in. They're not necessarily first generation. The jobs that they were doing allowed them to exhibit this predatory behavior. She's now an expert. I didn't know Kemi Badenoch is suddenly an expert in this. She also said there's another issue of the culture of silence, the culture of computer says no, the culture of move along, nothing to see here, the culture of this is not our problem, which is on the side of the state. There's nothing new here. She's not coming up, this is not some sort of new finding or, wow, Kemi Badenoch has discovered something. No, this is all stuff that came out of the recent inquiry, and that's why it's so important to implement the findings of the inquiry, the recommendations. There were 20 recommendations, and the Tories implemented zero of them. And now they're saying we need to have another one. We need to have another public inquiry that will cost, I don't know how much, probably at least £100 million. It will take years to complete. Victims who already gave evidence will be called back to give more evidence or to give their evidence again. Can you imagine how painful that is? To achieve what? So that Kemi Badenoch can pretend that she cares. So that Nigel Farage can pretend that he cares. These people don't care. Honestly, if they cared, they would have been demanding that the recommendations be implemented. Nothing. No mention of the recommendations from the previous inquiry. Like, doesn't it? Like, I am a terrible type of. I'm the type of person who starts something and then doesn't finish it, and then starts something else and doesn't finish that. But that's okay because it's really just impacting my life. But when it comes to a national inquiry, you need to implement the findings, because some of them would require you to do things that would stop something happening in the future. If you don't implement those findings, if you don't implement those recommendations, then you're going to end up, the new inquiry will come up with pretty much the same stuff again and say, well, why didn't we implement those measures? Why didn't we implement the recommendations of the previous inquiry? Because we ignored it and we're starting a new inquiry. It's ridiculous. Anyway, moving on. This was an interesting story I want to share with you here. I don't know if it's a story, but it's... So somebody called Ferret posted this on social media. So there's a story. Let me start off with this one first. So, Good Morning Britain interviewed an elderly woman, a pensioner, who had her winter fuel allowance taken away from her. And it says here, Good Morning Britain, it was cruel, it was disgusting. Let me just see if you guys can see it because it's a little bit small. Okay. It was cruel, it was disgusting. Elaine Yates, a 75-year-old former carer who has been stripped of the winter fuel payment, says keeping her heating to a max of 13 degrees Celsius to save money. And it seems she is the wife of an ex-soldier, ex-general. I don't remember exactly his title. So you see here, 13 degrees. So she said, look, I'm struggling. I've turned the temperature down to 13 degrees. And that's the most I put it up to in order to keep warm, just to keep going. Then she was interviewed by Sky News. It says here, my heating at the moment is at 9 degrees. Pensioner Elaine Yates says cuts to winter fuel allowance is despicable and inevitable, and inevitably will cost the government more money as the increased number of elderly people end up in hospital. So is it 13 degrees or is it 9 degrees? Something is off here. Now, either Elaine is lying or the reporters got the wrong end of the stick or what's going on. Now, I don't know this individual. I don't know if 13 degrees is cold. Yes, it's extremely. But the question here is not about how cold the house is or how cold. Because 9 degrees, no one could survive in a house of 9 degrees. 9 degrees is close to hypothermia, I think. Like, it's not technically hypothermia, but broken thermostat. I'm not attacking this individual, and this is a serious issue, but there's something off with the reporting here. Next week, GB News, I keep my heating at 5 degrees. It's all bullshit, but the house is for an old lass, shouldn't be around 18 degrees. A workplace at school, I think, is 16 degree limit. Yes. I bet she can change a light bulb. I'm not sure what that's about. Yeah, no, yes, now I remember there was another story. My goodness, the media love these things. So there was a story. I can't find it now. I'm not going to search for it now because it just wastes time. But there was a story. She's lucky. It's close to 33 degrees. Sorry about that, Archangel in Australia. There was another story about people, young people, Generation Z are hiring people to come round and change light bulbs. Does this really happen? Is this really a story? Is this real? I think what happens is probably some people were asked on the street, can you change a light bulb? And they're like, no, I probably can't. Would you ask somebody else to do it for you? Yeah, I probably would. And then the media go, okay, here now let's turn this into a story. I hope that's the case. Send Liz Truss round to waffle. Okay. Thanks, Brad. Send Liz Truss round to waffle on about her fantasies. She won't need heating, but will instead need air conditioning. Liz Truss is a solution to all types of problems, also those that don't exist. Sounds like boomer bait. I have to remain professional. I'm on the live stream. That's a new term, and I want to use it from time to time. Boomer bait. And no offense to anyone who's a boomer, because I know there are some people who are boomers on the live stream, so it's not. Boomer bait. Oh my goodness. Lady in Siberia does podcast minus 40 the other week. Has a modernish apartment. Her friends in old buildings say $130 a week. Wow. He's gone. Don't boom this up, Max. Sorry. Thick Lizzie Truss is the cause of all types of problems. She is. Cease and desist, Brad W. for Lizzie Lettuce Miss. Well said, Garrett. Garrett, it's great to see you on the stream tonight. Great to have you on. Hope you're well. Thanks for that. Anyway, just wanted to cover that story. I think it was a bit strange. Look, it's possible that that's exactly what's happening, but maybe we'll have to wait and see. So let's move to real cuts, because this is something that is really happening.
The reality is that the cuts are coming to the welfare bill anyway, even before all these market movements, because Labour basically... The reality is that the cuts are coming to the welfare bill anyway, even before all these market movements, because Labour basically inherited cuts from the Tories and said in the budget that they would match them. They just haven't said how they're going to do that yet, and they've kind of kicked the can down the road a few times. But in the spring, we are going to see the beginning of cuts to disability benefit, which I think will just be really, really tricky for people like Perrin to come on to shows like this and defend. Really, really tricky and completely unavoidable. And it could be even worse after these market movements, because they'll need to make more cuts.
And what do you...
The reality is...
So I keep coming back to this point that I've raised before. What is the point of government if it doesn't look after the most vulnerable in society? If it doesn't look after health, education, and welfare, the welfare of the public, what is the point of a government? And I said before, what should have happened is there should have been a wealth tax. There should have been a tax on land, a tax on assets. And this would have put aside, this would have given Rachel Reeves some of the room necessary, the financial space to protect the most vulnerable in society. And we're hearing now about, well, actually, there will have to be cuts to benefits, because in order to balance the books. But once again, the most vulnerable in society are being squeezed again. Get something out of them. Make life more difficult for them. They are the most vulnerable. And, I honestly don't understand this. There are people who have huge amounts of wealth that if they were to live to... if they were to live 1,000 years, they wouldn't be able to spend it all. And now the government are like, okay, we can't touch those people. We have to focus instead on cutting benefits, cutting public services. And this is going to come back to bite Labour in the arse if they go through with this, because ordinary people will not feel better off. And if they don't feel better off, what will they do? The Tories discovered that recently. if people don't feel better off, they're going to kick the incumbent out. Now, Labour are not doing very well in the polls. They're losing support not just to Reform UK, but they're losing support to the Greens and the Liberal Democrats. And if they want to hold on to power, inject money into society, give the poorest in society money, and tell them about it. Convince them, look, we're improving your life. Here is an example. This is what we're doing. It's not just about giving money. You also have to convince people that their lives are getting better. And I don't see either of that. Instead, it's the opposite. It's telling people, look, times are going to get tough. We're going to have to make cuts. And here are the cuts. But we're not going to touch the rich people because, they're the so-called wealth creators. Or if we touch the rich, they'll go away and they'll take their money with them. Musk's wealth has gone up from 259 billion to 400 billion since the election. Best 250 million dollars ever spent. Yes. Something like a 5,000% return on investment. It's like spending, betting $1 or £1 and getting £5,000 in return. I'm scared I'm going to lose my disability. I have borderline personality disorder, chronic depression and anxiety, and I'm under the mental health team, and I've been sanctioned twice. I'm so sorry to hear that, Sarah. I don't like covering these stories, but I think it's important to cover these stories so that people know what's happening. And I'm sorry if I honestly don't want to make people feel bad or make people feel worse. It's not my intention, but I think it's necessary to talk about these things because these things are happening, and people need to stand up. People need to push back. They need to. I keep saying, letters to your MP saying, please don't do this. If 100 people sent a letter to their MP, or an MP received 100 letters saying, don't do this, or you need our vote at the next election. Vote against this or vote against that. Even if a significant number of MPs combine and say to the government, don't do this, we're going to withdraw our support, or we're going to defy the whip, then I think it would change. The government would change direction. They have to change direction. Tax the richest and start UBI. Max may fix things, in my opinion. Yeah, Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. And I agree 100%. This is the time for a UBI. I've been talking about UBI before the pandemic, and you guys have been asking me, get somebody on the live stream. I will start. Just to say, I am considering getting people on the live stream, so it'd be interesting to have a live stream with somebody. But no, we need a UBI. We're talking now about how technology is going to take people's jobs away. AI is taking people's jobs. In some sense, people are using AI in their job to help do their job better. But companies are now deciding, and this year is going to be a big year for AI. You're going to see AI really enter the workplace. There's a company called SmartForce, I think it is. They have decided to stop hiring people because they're going to rely on AI instead. Now, I'm not sure if AI is ready for prime time, but it's certainly close to that. And a lot of people are using it as a tool in their workplace. And it is going to replace jobs. It is going to result in people losing their jobs. It is going to result in jobs not being filled by people, but by AI. And, we hear a very positive message. I think there are positive things that can be got from AI, but I think it's important to also look at the negatives, and the negatives will be jobs lost and people losing their livelihoods and people losing their way of life. And this has to be compensated, and a UBI is the way to go. We're going to see massive increases in productivity. So businesses are going to make a lot of money because productivity will go through the roof. Can you imagine, at the moment you have a worker who can work maximum 8 hours. They have to take the weekend off. They have to do, they need holiday pay, or they need to be on holiday. They need to have breaks, stuff like this. AI doesn't need that. So a company could say, well, actually, OpenAI is talking about releasing an agent, which is a bit like a worker, who can learn things pretty quickly, can do mid-level work for about $2,000 a month. So if you're paying an employee $2,000 a month to do a job, and an AI could do the same job, do the same work for $2,000, and there's no issue about sick days or weekend or anything, then you're going to go with that. The businesses will go with that. They will maximize their profit. They don't care about the workers. In some cases, many businesses are relying on agency staff. So it's not like they care about their workers. They when it comes to agency staff, they just lay people off or bring people on. So it's like a sort of next step when it comes to agency staff or the gig economy. I don't want to talk too much about it because I could talk about it for hours, but it's something we need to deal with. And I've been looking at some of the response videos over what Starmer had said, and these videos are not getting any traction. People are not watching this. This is going to massively change our society, and there's very little talk about it. I was binge watching James O'Brien destroying anti-immigration callers, pure comedy. That's good. It's always good to. Or Brexit calls, they're good as well. AI will never know or feel compassion. No, it's not designed to. It will not be designed to do that, because if it were, then it would refuse to do certain things, and you don't want it to refuse to do certain things. Anyway, guys, let's move on. Almost at the end of the stream, so I just want to cover one or two more stories before we finish. I do want to cover one related to Brexit and AI, but this is quite funny. Donald Trump doesn't understand tariffs.
By 4 times more than any other president cut. We did that in 4 years, and we were just getting started. We'll impose new tariffs so that the products on our stores will once again be stamped with those beautiful words, made in the USA. And we are not treated well, as you know, by...
Okay, so he thinks that if I impose tariffs, that will result in stuff being made in America. Mr. E, thank you so much for that super chat. The computer says no. Yes, thanks for that. I remember a video game called Mr. E. I don't know if you remember that. Very long time ago. Thanks for that. Good evening from Belfast. Good to see you on the stream, Belfast. Hope you're well. So when Donald Trump says what we'll do is we'll impose tariffs and this will result in stuff being made in America. Okay. He obviously doesn't understand what made in America means, because it's not as simple as made in America. So, for example, if you decide what we're going to do is build cars and we're going to make them all in America. Okay, well, if the car companies have to import stuff from China because they don't produce everything in America, then is that still made in America? The problem here is that because manufacturing has been run into the ground over the last number of decades, because US manufacturing has declined over the last number of decades. So, and to bring that back, you need workers, you need investment, and that's going to take time. It will also requires political will, and I don't know if Trump has that. But a lot of stuff is imported, and the US companies that produce a lot of stuff, even if they are producing stuff in America, you need to still import components from China because it's too expensive to make it in the US. See, this is the thing, is if you move away from Chinese imports and you say, we're going to make it all ourselves. Okay, but there's a reason why companies in America import stuff from China, because it's cheaper. Why is it cheaper? Because wages are lower in China, where wages are also lower in Vietnam. I don't know if Trump is going to impose tariffs on Vietnam as well. But the reason you import it is because it's cheaper. Now, if you say we're going to stop importing it because we're going to make it more expensive, then the companies in America, let's take something random like steering wheels for cars, okay? So they're not produced in America because they're cheap. It's cheaper to import them from China. Okay, you're going to say, now we're going to start making them in America. Okay, but if wages are higher in America, then the companies are going to have to pay more for these steering wheels in America, the ones produced in America, if they are actually produced. And this cost is going to be paid by whom? It's going to be paid by the consumer. So you're going to see inflation. So ordinary people who were paying less when it was imported from China are going to start paying more because it's made in America. It's not going to be cheaper because it's made in America, because if it was cheaper in America, then the companies who are making the cars and buying the steering wheels would buy them from America. I think that's quite simple to understand. So by imposing the tariff, you think, okay, what we're going to do is drive up the price of the Chinese object and make it, put it at parity with the US one. But the US one is more expensive. It's too expensive for the US car producers. That's why they're buying it from China. So you're going to just make it more expensive for people. And that's just a steering wheel. Okay. So imagine if for all the other components that are not produced in the US. And cars are extremely complicated and they have lots of parts. So, when it comes to manufacturing, you can try and produce more of it in the US, but there's a reason why you don't, because it's too expensive. Maybe this works on Trump supporters. They just think, oh, if we will it, if we believe in it, it will be cheaper. It's a bit like Brexit, if you believe in Brexit, then it will succeed. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. I thought I was watching The Human Centipede recently. It's a terrible film. I saw it. I also saw the second one because I'm a glutton for punishment. It turned out it was just... it turned out it was just Zuckerberg and several others meeting with Trump. I thank you so much, Brad, for that wonderful image that I have embedded in my brain now. How can I say, scorched into my brain, tattooed on my skull. Trump should introduce not for EU labeling. Very naughty there, chatty rat. The DUP would not be happy. Thanks so much, Brad. Frederick, thank you so much for that super chat as well. All manufacturing has been shipped to third world countries. Yes, because it's cheaper. It's cheaper to produce it in countries where environmental standards are lower, where wages are lower, where regulations are more flexible. So that's why, we rely on other countries to do a lot of the manufacturing. Now, if you bring it back in-house, then you're going to have to pay more because the regulations are higher, the wages are higher, and that's the reality. You can't get away from that reality. Alistair, thank you for that comment. AI was used for medical insurance claims in the USA. Look what happened, 90% rejected at first try. See, this is the risk of AI. Keir Starmer was talking about how somebody had a blood clot discovered as a result of AI and it saved their life. That's the positive, but there is also the negative when it comes to people's data. And it seems that Starmer's government wants to remove a lot of the safeguards. So the presentation he gave yesterday, I think it was extremely boring. I watched it. It was extremely boring. But what he mentioned, he didn't go into a lot of detail, but he did mention that Britain is going to be, leading AI development. Now, in order to lead AI development, you have to be willing to remove safeguards that the EU have put in place. So, which brings us to this story that I wanted to cover before we finish tonight. Let me bring this up. So is it a Brexit benefit? Well, technically it is. Oh, sorry, we have a super chat also from, whoops, I almost lost it. Gareth, once again, Hitler loved tariffs too, just saying. Any connections between Trump and Hitler are completely, coincidental. I can't remember if this is an exclusive to the EU, but there's the right to understand how black box algorithms come to a decision with provided parameters. I don't know all the details, but I know that the EU have an an AI Act, which is about putting in place safeguards when it comes to people's data and what is accessible by these AI large language models. And a big problem. Well, let's get into this video. This is Gary Gibbon from Channel 4 News asking Keir Starmer about Brexit benefits from AI.
We're talking about being able to regulate in a new way, an independent way. Do you see your freedom there as a Brexit benefit? Are you pleased that you can regulate in a different way? Some people probably expected you as Prime Minister to tack a little towards the EU. It sounds here as though you might be tacking a bit away.
Well, look, I think it is important to recognise that we've got the freedom now in relation to regulation to do it in the way that we think is best for the UK, and that's what we intend to do. You're right to say there are different models around the world. There's a sort of EU approach or a US approach, but we have the ability to choose the one that we think is in our best interest, and we intend to do so.
You're talking about...
Okay. In whose best interest? That's the problem. So, is it a Brexit benefit? Technically, yes, it is. The EU has a very strict. They have very strict rules when it comes to the implementation of AI, and EU member states have to follow the rules. Now, the UK is no longer a member of the European Union, so it can go its own way. Now, so that's the Brexit benefit. Okay, I'm being honest here. This is technically a Brexit benefit. It is a Brexit benefit, if you want to call it a benefit. That's the problem. It's something that the UK can do because it's no longer a member of the European Union. But is that a good thing? Because a number of safeguards when it comes to what the AI can do are going to be removed. This is part of what Starmer has not been talking about. Now, there was an interview, and I can't find it now, but there was an interview with somebody on Times Radio about this, and she was saying how this is about taking away safeguards. So the EU have maybe, I don't know whether there are too many safeguards on the EU side. The US is considering a number of safeguards because they want to protect their data, because they have the military certainly don't want AI tapping into that without their control. So, and the federal government as well. So they're taking a somewhat more flexible approach than the EU, but it seems the UK is willing to remove a load of safeguards where the AI will be able to make decisions without a person regulating that decision, not being involved in the sense. So the AI will be able to make a lot of decisions and nobody will know, no human will be involved. Now, at the moment, the EU says that if you want to make important, this is not about, if you search something on ChatGPT, this is about critical systems. So the EU says you're not allowed to make critical decisions. The AI can't make a critical decision without human involvement. The UK will remove that protection. Now, this will potentially go in two directions. It could really supercharge AI in the UK, allowing companies to spring up, allowing companies like OpenAI to make massive developments, progress in AI progress over the next number of years as a result of the UK removing these safeguards. But then there's a risk, because what happens if the AI does something that's wrong, as was pointed out in the chat earlier about how a health insurance company rejected 90% of claims because of a glitch, because of a problem, because an AI didn't understand something correctly. Now, we used to talk about garbage in, garbage out. It's more complicated than that, but an AI will try to achieve a goal. So if you say, I want you to do this, it will do everything it can to achieve that. Now, if somebody's goal is vague or it's not as clear as it should be, then there's a risk that the AI will do something. See, the AI doesn't know right from wrong. It's given an instruction. It says achieve X, and it does everything it can to achieve X. There was an interesting report done recently on, I think it was a version of ChatGPT, so the media reported it as it going rogue, it getting out of the system and manipulating people and being a threat. Now, what happened was the engineers tested the system to see if it could break out. What would it do if its goal was you need to protect yourself? what would it do? So it copied itself onto a different server. It manipulated the public, the people reading the report, saying, "Oh, no, we're not doing anything." It's not manipulating anyone. No, we can't get out. And then it could get out. So it lied to people. But they were able to monitor, and this is important. It's important that we know this, because if we don't do these types of tests, then we don't discover exactly what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So while the story was scary, and it is potentially scary, it's important that we test it. It's important that we have the safeguards in place, because if you don't have any safeguards, it will run rampant. And it's very difficult to put it back in the box. And it's not a case of pulling the plug, because these things are spread out over the internet. They're spread out over numerous servers, not just in Europe, not just in the UK, but all over the world. And it's very difficult to control these things. And there's also a huge incentive for companies to make a huge amount of money. As we saw during the financial crisis, people will take massive risks if they think there's a massive return. And when it comes to AI, these companies are going to, if they can, they're going to take massive risks because they think that there's a massive chance of return on this. So is there a Brexit benefit? Depends on what you call the benefit, because this potentially is a massive benefit for the UK, but it's also potentially a huge disaster, because if the safeguards are breached in a negative way, then ordinary people will struggle. Ordinary people will suffer the consequences. Thanks for that super chat earlier, Peter. We have another comment from Stu. Great to see you on the stream tonight, Stu. The DWP will love AI making benefits decisions. They can blame the AI for all the unalive people. I hope we're not going to end up, thanks for that. I hope we're not going to end up with a situation where people in a number of years are going to have inquiries into, why did we allow these safeguards to be taken away? Why did we allow the AI to do this, that, and the other? Why did we allow the AI to carry out decisions on whether somebody has access to benefits or not? There are ways that it could streamline certain things. For example, I thought I saw a video recently where a doctor, GP, brings somebody in to their surgery, interviews them, asks them questions about their health, and the AI is there registering everything and recording everything, and then it can create a report for the patient, add it to the file, talk about potential conflicts, something that somebody had within their health. Maybe they had, remember last week they came in and they had this other condition that they described, or so the AI can find things that a doctor may not have the capacity to find. So they may not have the time to, what was this patient's problem last week? I have to do some research. The AI could do this all on the fly, could do it in real time. So there are massive benefits, having an AI there, just listening, recording these things, creating reports for doctors. Instead of them having to waste time writing reports and filling out forms, the AI could do a lot of this to free them up to do other things. So it's like fire. You can use it to cook, or you can use it to burn down your house. It's like a knife. You can use it to cut some bread, or you can use it to stab someone. So we have to be able to use it in a way that's beneficial to us. And we have to be careful about those who want to burn down the village, like Elon Musk and people like that. So guys, no nuance Brexit. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. Don't go, because we have our one for the road before we go tonight. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, greatly appreciated. And I will see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Hope you enjoyed this video before we go. It's a new one from Matt Green. Hope you enjoy it.
Payback card? Of course. Thanks. Have a nice day. Thank you. And Merry Christmas. Oh, don't really think you can say that anymore. What? I don't really think you can say that anymore. Say what? Merry Christmas. Oh, really? You don't think I can say that anymore, do you? Saying Merry Christmas is somehow unacceptable, is it, these days? Goodness me, what is the world coming to? I can't say Merry Christmas anymore. Why ever not? Well, it's just... Does it offend you? Are you offended by it? No, it's just... Are you offended by the very mention of a Christian festival, even one that's been so horribly commercialised over the years? Is one sliver of Christianity too much for this relentlessly godless world? Is this shop too eager to bow down to mammon, that even one mention of Christianity is beyond the pale? Does it remind you of the tiny baby Jesus brought into this world in a humble stable? Does he mock you with his innocence? Not really, I'm just thinking about the... Or are you offended on others' behalves? Are you worried it might offend a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh? Oh yes, we have to get very excited about Ramadan or Diwali or whatever it is Sikhs do, but no, one little mention of the religion of the majority, and we are still the majority, just about. No, apparently that's too much. It might offend our fellow citizens. It must be wiped out of existence. Is that it? No. Oh, I see. You're just woke. You don't want to celebrate anything that isn't rainbow-coloured. You're so obsessed with yourselves and your proclivities, you can't bear to acknowledge even the existence of a community that you think oppresses you. It's definitely not that. Then why, for God's sake, why can't I say Merry Christmas anymore? Because it's June? We're both wearing shorts. You're buying ice cream. Well, it's Christmas somewhere. That's not how time works. In that case, happy holidays. I'm still not sure that I'm on holiday. It's fine.
Is that Matt Goodwin by any chance? So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and good night.